is in crisis.
การแก้ไขปัญหาโควิดถือเป็นวาระแห่งชาติ
And people are looking for hope and answers. Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.
สวัสดีค่ะ Very good evening. Welcome to our 7 o'clock news, Thai PBS World Tonight. I am Natha Gomonwadin.
And good evening, I'm Thep Chayong. And judging from what the Prime Minister said today, Natha, it's very likely that we will have a full cabinet sooner than later now.
Yes, so it's soon to be coming. And with COVID-19, today it's reported to have 5 new imported cases. So it's still good news, no local transmission.
All right, tonight we start with the latest on the COVID-19 situation. In what is expected to further anger its critics, the Prayut government is now on its way to extending the state of emergency for at least another month. And today, Prime Minister Prayut defended the extension of the state of emergency on the grounds that the government still needs effective legal tools to deal with the pandemic. The current state of emergency will expire at the end of this month. The decision to extend the state of emergency was made today during a meeting of a committee tasked with easing the coronavirus lockdown. It needs to be endorsed by the Center for COVID-19 Situation Administration, which is chaired by the Prime Minister. The center will meet tomorrow, during which it is also expected to endorse the next phase of relaxation of lockdown measures. It will include reopening of the country to limited categories of foreigners. Among them will be migrant workers from neighboring countries, members of film production crew, organizers of trade exhibitions, and people with medical appointments.
And Prime Minister Prayut said the extension of the state of emergency is being considered purely on the grounds of public health safety. It has nothing to do with the street protest, he said, referring to the anti-government protests organized by students and political activists over the weekend. Opposition politicians and political activists have accused the government to using the state of emergency to stifle freedom of expression. Meanwhile, Dr. Thira Warathanarat of the medical faculty of Chulalongkorn University has expressed concerns that the student rallies over the week could pose a risk of a resurgence of the coronavirus. He noted in his Facebook post that the protesters hardly practiced social distancing. Many did not wear masks and were seen shouting at each other.
We should take a note that the spokesman of the anti-COVID-19 Center, Kunatha, Dr. Thavisin, no longer talks about how many days we haven't had local transmission cases, right? He said he doesn't want people to be obsessed with figures. Well, he will continue to say that today we don't have any local transmission, but
yes,
he wouldn't say how many days now that we haven't had that. So he wants the people not to be too sort of obsessed with these figures too much. Otherwise, if there is one single case, and then people will become panic.
Yes, we learned it hard ways from the case from Rayong province.
That's right. Okay.
That's why we need to be careful with statistics.
And today we have seen the first reaction from the Prime Minister to the student demonstrations over the weekend. And his reaction is very clear. Don't cross the line. He was talking about the way that the students have been behaving during the 2 days of demonstration. He said the public will not tolerate their conduct. The Prime Minister was not specific as to what particular aspect of the political campaign launched by the student organizations he was referring to, but it's understood that he is disturbed by what he saw as an obvious anti-monarchy tones of the protest. At least 2,000 people turned up for a night-long protest at the Democracy Monument on Radamdern Avenue on Saturday. It was followed by two smaller protests in Chiang Mai and Ubon Ratchathani provinces the next day. The three protests were clearly coordinated and were aimed at Prime Minister Prayut and the military. The protesters are demanding the House of Representatives to be dissolved to pave the way for a general election and a new and more democratic constitution to be drafted. They also want to see an end to what they alleged to be government's harassment of its critics. However, some of the remarks made by protest leaders and posters waged by some protesters were seen as being critical of the monarchy. The Prime Minister said he had ordered authorities concerned to be more careful in dealing with the protesters, but he also warned the protesters not to cross the line in what is seen as his reference to anti-monarchy messages. I am sure that Thai people will not tolerate it. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want things to be overblown, he said today on the students' demonstrations. And on the demands made by the students, the Prime Minister said they should be submitted to him through official channels. The protest leaders said they would give the Prime Minister 2 weeks to respond to their demands, or they would step up their protest.
Student protests against the Prayut government first emerged early this year, but were temporarily suspended as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. The demonstrations over the weekend went ahead despite warnings that they could be in violation of the state of emergency, which bans public gatherings. Police, however, said they have yet to decide whether to file charges against the protester. The demonstration have renewed fears of further political polarization, which has gripped the country for the past decade, and possible violent conflicts.
ในการแก้ปัญหาขณะเดียวกันขอให้ผู้ชุมนุมเรียกร้อง
And today, the Pheu Thai Party, Kun Natta, issued a statement on the current situation, and it asks the government to exercise restraint in dealing with the protests. Its leader, Kun Sompong Amampiwat, also calls on the government to listen to people's voices and not to treat its critics as adversaries.
Kun Sompong Amorivat also voiced support for the protesters' demand for a rewrite of the current constitution, which he said is a legacy of military dictatorship. Meanwhile, a number of academics urged the government to have a dialogue with the protesters instead of dismissing their demands outright. Dr. Ekapan Bintavanit of the Institute of Human Rights and Peace Studies of Mahidol University told Thai PBS World that Prime Minister Prayut should be aware of the rising discontentment among the public. He said the Prime Minister should take the initiative of having talks with all stakeholders to discuss how the country should move forward. He said a dialogue on how the constitution should be amended to make it more democratic should be an important first step.
It's interesting that most of the academics and political scientists we talked to believe that the activities by the students and their demands should be a forum for people with different or even conflicting views on politics to get together. Should be a forum for diverging views, I mean, to be put down on the table and to be discussed, instead of seeing the student movement or the activity as sort of a troubles for the government.
Yeah, because this is very crucial juncture for politics in Thailand, and to have political participation from every stakeholder is quite crucial to try to listen from different opinions.
Yeah, and now let's move to real politics. Finally, the Prime Minister today confirmed that he has his new cabinet lined up ready. But of course, there are names that he today declined to talk about, because there have been names that have been nominated for more important positions in the government. But these are names that he declined to even to comment on today. I am the one calling the shots, the Prime Minister said at a news briefing in response to reports that the ruling Palang Pracharat Party has insisted on claiming the Energy Ministry, which is considered to be one of the plumped positions in the government. The party, which is the core component of the Prayut coalition, wants one of its key executives, Kun Surya Jing Rungrungkit, to take over the Energy Ministry. Surya, who is currently Industry Minister, commands a powerful faction in the party and is posing a major challenge to Prime Minister Prayut, who backs another candidate, Kun Phairin Chuchotthawon, a former Deputy Communications Minister for the portfolio. The Prime Minister today denied that the cabinet reshuffle is being clouded by demands from the Palang Pracharat. He said he has already talked things out with its leader, General Pravit Wongsuwan, who is also a Deputy Prime Minister. He insisted that his decision was not based on the so-called quota system, which traditionally dictates how cabinet seats are shared among partners in the ruling coalition. Members of the Palang Pracharat Party have repeatedly claimed that the Energy Ministry is part of the party's cabinet quota. And this is what the Prime Minister had to say about this quota issue. He said, there have been no talks about quota. I am doing what is most suitable. This is the message he tried to emphasize during the press briefing today when asked about the allocation of the cabinet posts among coalition partners. Besides the Energy Ministry, Palang Pracharat Party also reportedly wants to keep the industry and education portfolios, as well as promoting government spokeswoman Kun Narambon Pinjosinwat, who is also one of its key members, to become Minister of the Prime Minister's office. Prime Minister Prayut said his cabinet lineup is now complete and is in the process of document verification before it can be made public. He also declined to comment on speculation that Foreign Minister Don Pramat Vinay would be dropped from the new cabinet lineup. When asked about this speculation, he said, I don't know, just wait and see.
And the cabinet reshuffle was triggered by the resignations 2 weeks ago of Deputy Prime Minister Somkit Jatusipitak and his economic team. Labour Minister Jatumongkol Sonakul yesterday became the latest cabinet to resign. The Action Coalition for Thailand party said it has decided to nominate Dr. Anek Lau Thamatat, an academic turned politician, to succeed him. The party is a minor partner of the Prayut coalition. Spokesman of the party, Ketrat Lau Thamatat, said the party's executive committee is confident that Anek is qualified for the Labour portfolio. Anek is a founder and a member of the party. Ketrat said the party intends to make the Labour Ministry a principal mechanism in reviving the economy in the aftermath of the coronavirus pandemic. He said the party is also working on plans to deal with unemployment through a bill designed to help workers and their families cope with the current crisis.
The cabinet reshuffle certainly is a big test of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha's leadership, because the big question is whether he can really reshuffle the cabinet the way he sees fit, or he will succumb to pressure from the Palang Pracharat Party or not.
Yes.
That's a question that certainly will be answered in the next few days.
Yeah, that's real taste of leadership and how he make final decision, because cabinet reshuffle is full of politics and negotiation. And on top of Thai politics right now, spotlight is also on American politics as well, especially on the two candidates on presidential election. And today they have more information on the budget that the two major candidates are spending, and Kunat Bunak has the story for us. So what's going on to the politics in the US?
So today the spending for the presidential campaign for both President Trump and Joe Biden has finally been revealed. So we'll start with President Trump. So according to the filings to the Federal Election Commission, Trump's re-election campaign has spent more than $50 million only in June, and that is twice the amount spent the month before here. But when we look at Joe Biden's presidential campaign, he spent much less than President Trump at almost $37 million. So there is a big difference here between the spending from President Trump as well as Joe Biden.
But the big amount of that expense must be on advertising budget.
Definitely.
And what's the difference?
So for Trump's campaign, they have spent on the advertising campaigns more than 41 million US dollars on television, digital advertising, as well as other advertisements as well. And of course, those advertisements, as we expect, all of them took shots at Biden as well as his record on China. Although Trump's campaign bought significant television airtime, Biden's campaign increased his spending on digital advertising in June to nearly 17 million US dollars from about only 175,000 the month before. So there is a big jump here. So in May, they only spent around $175,000. They actually increased that budget to 17 million. So that means Biden's campaign is more focused on digital advertising. So that is why they decided to put in so much budget here. But despite the differences in spending, it seems that Mr. Biden raised more money than President Trump here, because Biden's campaign raised up to 63.4 million US dollars, whereas President Trump's campaign raised only 55.2 million US dollars.
But there are more than 3 more months to go before the election, so you can be sure that more money will be spread around leading up to the final day.
Definitely.
Yeah. But ability to raise more funds, does it interpret into like leader in the poll?
Unfortunately, it doesn't for President Trump, because currently Mr. Biden is leading in many of the polls. And if we put it to an average, Mr. Biden got around like 50.4%, while President Trump only got 41.6%. And that's only the average compared to all the polls, the national polls. So the New York Times analysis even stated that Biden's polling lead is the biggest of any presidential candidate in decades. So that means Mr. Biden is leading, and that gap here is much bigger compared to previous presidential candidates in previous elections here. And public opinion polls also showed preference for Mr. Biden, with voters expressing disapproval over Trump's handling of the pandemic and the recent protests over racial injustice.
But maybe polling is hard to trust, because in 2016, nearly every poll speculated that Hillary Clinton will win the election.
Oh, that's a good point. That's definitely a good point here. So maybe President Trump might win for the second term, but we cannot really put that for sure, though.
Yeah.
But in case you didn't know, Linkin Park has called on President Trump to stop using their music for the campaigns and the rallies and that happened after President Trump retweeted a campaign video that featured Linkin Park's song. So the band quickly took action by sharing a message with their fans on Twitter, saying that the band has never endorsed the president, and they have already sent a cease and desist letter. Linkin Park is not the only band. It's not the only band who has expressed disapproval for President Trump using their music. Previously, there has been big names like Queen, the Rolling Stones, Elton John, Rihanna, as well as Pharrell. So many of the artists actually expressed disapproval for President Trump using their music, and actually called out to say, well, instead of saying, please don't stop the music, please don't use my music.
So it's very controversial, and it seems that those singer artists are very sensitive.
Very sensitive, but
Yeah.
it's not really because of okay, for some people, for some of the artists might not support President Trump to begin with, but for cases like Elton John here, he once said that he has nothing against President Trump, but he just does not want his music to be involved with politics.
Yeah. And what about other development, Kun Nat?
And just so you know, these are the stories we've also been following today.
Thailand has recorded 5 new imported cases of COVID-19 today. All of them are returnees from Japan, Egypt, and Sudan. The new cases brought a total number of infections to 3,255, with 9 new recoveries and no new fatalities. The state of emergency, which might be extended to the end of August, will be discussed in the CCSA meeting tomorrow, along with the clarifications regarding the 6th phase of lockdown easing. Prime Minister General Prayut Chan-o-cha explained that the state of emergency extension had nothing to do with the recent political demonstrations. A medical professor from Chulalongkorn University has warned of a possible second wave of COVID-19 in Thailand, stating the recent surge in many countries, further lockdown easings in Thailand, and the weekend political protests may add to the risk. He also suggested that the travel bubble should be put on hold for at least 6 months due to the high risk of the virus.
So that's major development in Thailand on state of emergency and COVID-19 cases. And around the world right now, kids have to adjust their pace of learning, Kun Thepchai, Kun Nat, especially who don't have access to online learning. And poverty has become very big hurdle for kids in Africa because they cannot have access to online learning during this age of COVID-19. Take a look at this story for more details.
In the wake of COVID-19, many institutes of learning around the world have sealed their doors to shelter students from the disease. In the outskirts of Uganda capital, Kampala, Susan Ajeng, a mother of 3 young boys, goes about her household chores. Ordinarily, she'd be at her salon attending to clients, but when the government shut down high-risk businesses to stop the spread of the new coronavirus, she was out of work. With her only source of income cut off, Ajeng's main priority is caring children who are shut out of a school closed by the virus. Now, the young boys look after the pig farm and help their mother about the house. Ajeng is trying to make every day some sort of learning experience for her children.
If you go to school, you get more knowledge, but even schools they are needed to get more skills. So me, I have some project of mine. They go at the farm and they help me. So that's the way I'm maintaining them. If I don't get those newspapers at the supermarket, we got the farm and do our skills from there so that they may learn more.
The Ministry of Education has said the government would provide learning materials for poor families who could not afford to buy online tools or hire tutors, but the majority of the people say they haven't received anything. Susan's 9-year-old son, Nathan Chobi, wishes he could go back to school.
I was not going to school because of the disease of coronavirus, because our teachers told us, but today we are not going to school, but I was very sad. Now, when I'm home, I help my mother to clean pigs, giving them banana peels and water.
For most of children living in slums and in rural Uganda, access to learning materials is a far-fetched dream. The daily realities and struggles to access basic needs means education is often not a priority. Although the pandemic has disrupted education across the globe, the schooling crisis is more acute in Africa, where up to 80% of students don't have access to the internet and even electricity can be unreliable, making distance learning difficult, if not impossible. Another 9-year-old, Imani Utukunda Rutaki, goes to an international school. Imani's mother, Helga Nakiyingi Rutaki, is a banker. To ensure she doesn't lag behind in her studies, Rutaki has hired a private tutor for her daughter.
When the lockdown was lifted and the schools were still not going to open, I felt that that was going to be an opportunity for me to get somebody who could help to fill these gaps before school starts, so that by the time she goes back, she's in a better place with the things that she's behind on. I couldn't make a full assessment of them, so I needed somebody who could do that for me.
Pupils like Imani, with whose parents have equipment like laptops and internet access, have an easier time assessing education. The options for African students to keep studying while schools remain closed because of the coronavirus pandemic seem varied. But the reality for many is that they will fall behind and possibly drop out for school forever, worsening inequality on an already unequal continent.
That's how pandemic has disrupted young kids' life in Africa, so they have difficulty in having access to online learning. And back to Thailand, with the politics, we see how young people and different groups of people join together in rally in Bangkok, Chiang Mai and Ubon Ratchathani province. And what will be the implication of this rally, especially during this juncture of Thai politics? Right now we have Kun Phurdi Pitsuwan from Chiang Mai University School of Public Policy joining us live from Chiang Mai. Good evening, สวัสดีค่ะ Kun Phurdi.
Good evening ครับ
Yes. So did you have any chance to join or see or observe the protest in Chiang Mai?
In Chiang Mai, no. I landed on the day that I landed at the time when the protest was about to end. But I did went to see the one in Bangkok just to observe what's going on.
You were in Bangkok on Saturday night?
I was in Bangkok on Saturday.
Yeah, and as far as you could see, how was the sentiment among protesters?
I think a lot of grudges, a lot of pressure. Youth, and not only youth actually, there are a lot more people than I thought there would be, and everyone seemed to be holding extreme grudges against what is happening to our country so far, which is totally understandable.
Now, besides the demands put forth by the protester, what kind of message do you think that these protesters have sent out?
Oh wow, I think it's much more about to do with bigger picture, future of their life. These are, mostly younger than 40, young people younger than 40 years old. They will be living with this kind of structure, this kind of system for much longer than most of us who are older than them. And I think it just, it's also post-COVID, it's a combination of economic reason as well as political reason as well.
Yeah. And did you share the same sentiment with the protesters?
I do. I am saying in public here that I think it's the government should, people in power actually, not just the government, should take this seriously, that it's not a typical phenomenon. There is a message here that the government should take and consider what they could do, what have they done wrong, rather than just saying, looking at these young people as enemy. It's much more about being retrospective as well, about what has the government done, what has the Prayut regime done in the past almost 7 years.
Yeah. And how probable of the 3 demands that you heard from the protester to end political harassment, to dissolve the parliament and amend constitution? How do you see whether these are probable?
I think the demand are valid, considering the concern, considering the atmosphere. But I think it should actually be rearranged. I think the amendment, the rewriting of the constitution should happen first and foremost, or else if the Prayut government dissolve the parliament right now, and if I were Prayut government, I would dissolve the parliament right now because then I will have that benefit of saying that I given to the student at least one big demand of the student, and it could cool off the pressure a lot more. Because because if I were Prayut, I would still be confident because I still have 250 senators that I know would vote for me for sure. So in the end, to dissolve the parliament now, I don't think it would help the opposition, the students at all, because I don't know if you realize that in the last election, in the law right now, the election law right now says that you need 100 members if you are a party and if you would like to file a candidate in a constituency. As far as I know, only Parang Pracharat and Phum Chai Thai have all 100 members in each constituency to fill all the candidates, 350 candidates throughout the country. So if the Prayut government dissolve the parliament now, newer party like Cao Klai, even Kla party, or even Democratic Party, I don't think they are ready, and then I think there will be very, very non-competitive election, and I think they will come back, and nothing will change. It will still stay the same.
Judging from the remarks made by the Prime Minister today, it doesn't look like he's paying attention to the students' demonstrations, let alone agreeing to their demands. So how do you see the possibility of the demands being met?
Oh, I think it's quite low. If he listened at all, he would strategize in such a way that he would dissolve the parliament. But then I don't think he really listened, and that is the problem because I think it will keep spreading, and it is already spreading throughout the country, and I don't really see an end to it unless there is some other intervention that would put this cool off the pressure a little bit.
That's it. Now, the Prime Minister today also issued a sort of a warning to the students that don't cross the line. He wasn't specific as to what he was talking about, but it's understood that he was talking to some of the anti-monarchy messages, put out by some of the student activists. So how do you see this particular aspect of this protest that is being seen as being designed to drag in the monarchy into the picture?
I think it's also understandable, and I think people who are in power really need to take this message seriously about what is happening right now. And I don't think they should see this as a dissident, but more as a result, not as a cause of something that's going to happen, but more of a result of what has happened during the past few years. And I think there are a lot of things that the government, that the people in power could do to show that they care, to show that there has been some changes. First and foremost is to come up with a way to rewrite the constitution or amend some of the constitution that is really outright unequal, really outright giving advantage to one side of the political spectrum. So I think we have been. I'm going to touch up on this a little bit for academic purpose. I think we have been, through an era of Bhumipol consensus, and I feel like the young people, they grew up during the time, toward the end of the Bhumipol era, and then I think we are at the start of the new era, and I feel like there has to be a new consensus. I think a debate, intellectual debate, academic debate on how the relationship between the population and the Thailand top institution should be arranged. And I think that has to be discussed. That and the government has to be the key message in helping, bringing, setting up new consensus and the way that our society would live together. But I don't know if the Prayut government is performing this function.
I see. But the consensus that you're talking about is something that needs to be done very carefully, right? Otherwise, it could be sort of misused by opponents of the students to really target them and try to misinterpret their intention.
Yes, it has to be done very carefully. And then, but we already have a mechanism that would help alleviate the tension, alleviate the violence, which is through the parliament. So the member of parliament on the opposition side will have to take these messages and help put some of these through the parliament and discuss it. And I think we just need to beg for mercy for people who are really narrow-minded, because I feel like we need to open up that space of discussion, of rearranging how our society, different institutions in our society would live together. Seeing, taking the student as, treating them as enemy, as dissident, I feel like it's the wrong move. I think everyone should look through how do we get to this point. And I think that there is a way to help alleviate that, to incorporate this sentiment, and to help the reputation of everyone who is in power, help with the government, with the military. I feel there are a lot of things that could be done that we could all live together in harmony again, like once we used to be. And I feel like we really need to come together and discuss this.
The protester has given the government 2 weeks deadline. From now on, for 2 weeks, what do you think that both sides should do to try to talk or to open up space for more discussion?
Can you repeat your question again?
The protester has given deadline for the government for 2 weeks to comply with their demands. But for this period, for 2 weeks, what should happen between the two parties?
I think it will keep spreading. I think tomorrow there will be more protests, and then the next day there will be more protests throughout the I see events being arranged in Patalung, in the south, in the north, in the northeast, in Chonburi. I think it keeps spreading. If nothing really takes place in the next 2 weeks, people will come out again, and they will come out bigger. And then the turning point will be when people who used not to care too much about politics start joining the students. I think that's what we see with Gopawasor and other protests. If it's just the first mover, then it doesn't have the critical mass to bring about change. But when more people start joining, I think that is when we will see change. And I hope it's an amicable change that everyone could still live together.
But what do you see as the risk of this kind of rallies, because it's flash mobs and no real core leaders yet at the moment?
I think it's very organic. I think it's good. I think it's good not to ask for a leader. I think it's good that it's organic, it's done by a student. It will be problematic if it's led by an interested party who will, either come to power after this, if they are successful at toppling the Prayut regime. So I think it is very good right now that it's organic, and I hope the politicians on the opposition, as much as they can, just stay in the parliament and voice that concern through the channel that they are meant to do. If they start quitting and joining the protest, I feel like we will see the same issue that we had when the Gopawasor protest.
You're saying that more rallies are expected to spring up across the country, right? So, yes. But you think this will be enough to sort of convince the government to sit down at the negotiating table and talk to the demonstrators or their leaders?
I don't think they would do that, because then they will look like they give in to, they call it mob mung ming, right? I don't know how to translate that in English. An unserious mob, unserious protest. I mean, if they think of it like that, they can't negotiate. It will give credibility to the protester, to the leader, whoever is the one or two students who are being the face of the protest now. So they can't really do that. But I think what they can do I hope they would do it, just to do something that would alleviate the concern, that lower the tension a little bit, which is I think dissolving the parliament, because they will come back anyway, I think might help, or pull out or get rid of the Paragor Chukchern. But the government just reinstated and then extended it for 1 month again today, which is disappointing. I think if he pull back the emergency decree, I think that would help. There are these small things that I think could help alleviate the tension, but I really don't know if the government see it the same way that I do. Because I don't want it, because I know that if it's like this, the government keep pushing, keep acting strongly, I think it might end in violence.
Okay. But do you think the government and those in power are underestimating the strength of the student movement?
I think they are totally underestimating the strength. And I think the next 2 weeks, I think, will be about monitoring whether it's serious, how widespread it is. And I think the students know this, and I think they will try to show that they have something in their what do you call, something to show. And I think they're showing it. And I think people will be surprised by the power that they hold.
And how do you think the whole country should try to understand the protester, and how should we take a look at protesters?
I think it's not that difficult to understand. Think of it as if most of people, I think, who are listening right now have families, have young kids in college, just finished college, young adults. We are being faced with tremendous economic crisis, health crisis, that is unprecedented. We have not seen before. And these children, think of them as our children. They have to live through this. They have to live much longer than us. And they want a brighter future, and they don't see any hope right now. The party that they elected got dissolved, so they don't have any choice. They don't really know who to elect. There is a new party now that is that is taking over the votes from Future Forward. But then that party, we're not sure if it's ready, how organized is it, how institutionalized it is. So people are really hopeless, are in this array. Like, they don't really know whether their voices mean anything. And if I have to beg the government, I think just to think of these children as their own children, that they don't see any bright future in their country. Yes. They don't even know. I mean, they know for a fact if there is an election that if they go to vote, their choice of candidate will never win. I think that alone kill all the hope that we all see in this country. Yes. And it makes democracy not competitive. Don't forget that this government has a very low legitimacy, political legitimacy in the first place. They came into power based on an interpretation of the way the votes are counted. I mean, the way the vote is counted favor one side, and no one knew that was going to be the way that the vote were to be counted. So it has a very low legitimacy. And this constitution was passed, but then the opposition people who think this shouldn't pass, this constitution is not good enough, were barred from campaigning, were put in jail. So it was not a fair start in the first place. Think of it as when you watch football, when you watch soccer. If Manchester United were playing Liverpool, but the rule was set to favor your favorite team in the start, and then imagine what the supporters of the opponent would be. The rule was not written so that anyone can win. The rule was written so that one side can win, and that think of it as if people can't really grasp the gravitas of this, think of it as an analogy in a football game. I think.
There are academics who have suggested that instead of looking at the student movement with fears, their demands and what they are doing now should be the beginning of a process for people with different views or even conflicting views to sit down together and talk about the country's future. Do you see also that this thing in this context?
I see that if I were able to advise the government, that should be the way forward. But I agree that they see this more from a fear basis, from yeah. I think they don't. I don't know if they are willing to talk. I don't know if they see this as a threat. That is a one. It's a one mindset. It's a way of how we see the country moving forward. They see it one way. The government and their supporters see it as another way, and it's really hard for us to come together. I think, but I hope we do. And I think if the government take the initiative to do something to amend the constitution, to understand that the 250 senators appointed are problematic. I think I don't know how in the world can a good democracy that anyone can feel like they can participate, they can win, have this kind of structure.
No, but if the government continues to ignore the demands, do you see any other forces in the society that are in the position to bring these two conflicting parties together to sit down for some kind of dialogue or talk? You mentioned earlier about the members of parliament, right? But are there any other forces that can do that play that role?
In the past there have been, but I'm not sure if it's a good idea. I think the monarchy has played that role in mitigating the impasse, in helping bringing parties to talk. I think having that mandate, but it will have to be done quietly through the government. And I hope that everyone come with open mind and willingness to talk. And we have seen, to give credit to our top institution, we have seen, I know that they are monitoring this, and we have seen adjustment. For example, if you notice, there was an incident where the road closure was disturbing the traffic, and there was and that night Twitter erupted about how our way, the way that this has been done should be changed, and we see the change. So I think there is hope for that dialogue, and I really hope for something brighter for all of us.
Okay.
I remain hopeful.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's the best we can do for now. Thank you very much, Kun Fuadi, for joining us live, and please stay tuned because we will talk to you more in Thai for Tan Lok with Thai PBS World. But thank you very much for now.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night for now. And that's all. That's insight from Kun Fuadi Pitsuwan. He's political scientist, PhD candidate from Oxford University. But right now he's in Thailand, in Chiang Mai province, and with Chiang Mai University Public Policy Institute. And that brings us to the end of Thai PBS World tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
When the world is in crisis
การแก้ไขปัญหาโควิดถือเป็นวาระแห่งชาติ
and people are looking for hope and answers, Thai PBS World is there with you with the best minds of the day. Join us on Thai PBS World tonight, every weekdays at 7 p.m. Thai PBS World, we bring Thailand to the world.